Hi there, my name is Ted M. Young, and this video is about a tool that I figured I'd try out, and while I'm trying it out, record a video of me trying it out. So there's a project called Open Rewrite that what it can do is rewrite your code, usually used for tasks like upgrading versions of your frameworks or your libraries. And I decided to test it on a project that I'm resurrecting for a class I'm teaching in Java that happens to be Java 1.8 or Java 8, Spring Boot 1.5, and also JUnit 4. So I figured instead of me manually doing it, it's not a large project, I could do it, but I figured I wanted to try out this Open Rewrite project while I have actually a perfect project for that. So I already made sure that all the tests pass, because I've got lots of tests. They all pass both from running inside IntelliJ and running from Maven, so I just want to make sure Maven was all working as well, so that's all good. I already added the plugin, and so the next step is I'm going to run Discover to tell me what recipes are available, and we'll see. And then looks like I'll add in some configuration to tell it which recipes I actually want it to execute. So let's go take a look at what it comes up with. So that's under Maven plugins, and I'm going to do the Discover one, and let's take a look what it comes up with. So it looks like I can do a bunch of different code styles. I'm curious at how Spring Format v2 differs from the Google Java format. I'm going to actually take a look at that, but I'm not worried about styles right now. I'm worried about the three things, which is upgrading Java to 11, upgrading Spring Boot to 2.5 would be nice, as well as JUnit 4 to JUnit 5. That latter one is actually the most interesting for me, because I want to be able to run tests under Spring Boot 2.5. So there's a whole bunch of recipes. So we've got some security. That one will be interesting to look into. There's a lot to look into here. Some sort of standard things like if you want to change type or change package. Looks like we could do some of those, some cleanup. So things like maybe finalize local variables. Personally, I dislike final local variables, but that's just me. I prefer my methods to be small enough where I don't need it to be final. But I also don't work, or no longer work, in a company that has 1,000 developers working on a code base. We've got format stuff around blank lines and spaces and the wonderful tabs and indents stuff. Maven properties. So I'm not seeing offhand how to do one for the one I'm actually interested in. So let's go take a look. Migrate to Java. Let's do migrate to Spring Boot 2 from Spring Boot 1. Let's take a look. So what does this do? It'll update the Maven dependencies. It'll migrate any Spring Boot properties, some wiring stuff, and it'll do the JUnit 4 to 5 migration. So that is pretty much what I want, other than the Java 8 to 11, which I guess I can run separately. So this is some sample code. What I'm not seeing is how to do it. So it's showing me the before. It's showing me some conditional bean configuration. It's showing me some issues. I don't see actually how to execute this. So let's go to the configuration. Maybe it's there. So what I'm looking for is what the name of the recipe I want. So I would have expected to see some Spring Boot stuff. So I'm not sure why those are not showing up. Because those should have come up first. Did I just miss them? No. So I wonder why it didn't detect those. I could generate that, but that's not interesting. So I wonder what. Because everything compiles under Spring Boot 1.5, so and it's certainly at least indirectly using JUnit 4. How about if we just look at this migrate? So, all right, well, I am a little stuck, because I would have expected it to find it. I did that. I did the discover, but I don't know the name of the recipe that I want to do. Oh. So this is confusing. If I understand what this is saying correctly, it's that there are recipes that are not part of rewrite core. So if I'm going to need to pull in rewrite Spring, which is what it looks like here as a dependency of the plugin, let's try that. So let's pull that in, and then what we'll do is we'll run the discover and see if that gives us anything in addition. So let's go back to here. And that's the dependency as part of that. Let IntelliJ do its thing. Let's look under rewrite. So I'm a bit iffy because it's unclear to me whether this got pulled in. IntelliJ can be sometimes flaky about whether it actually worked. So let's do a discover and see if that made any difference. Aha! So it is pulling some stuff down. And yeah, so we're seeing additional things like assert J. And we're seeing Spring Boot stuff. All right, so that is an issue I will have to file, or maybe just do a pull request directly for the documentation, that when they do the migrate to Spring Boot, in fact, I think both of these only, well, certainly the rewrite Spring related stuff only showed up when I added the rewrite Spring recipe. That was sort of unexpected because I got stuck before basically getting to this step, and so I would not have realized that unless I pushed forward. So let's go do some of these recipes. I think what I don't know is how much this recipe covers. So let's, I assume that's this one. So what I would do here is I would say, and here's the specific recipe that you're going to run. Because as far as I can tell, that specific recipe is not mentioned anywhere. So let's try that. So the way we do that is we add on configuration active recipes. Let's do that. So we'll put that here, but we don't want this recipe. We actually want, what was it? This one. And hopefully that'll do everything. It would be nice to see sort of also if there's some kind of relationship, like does this recipe call sort of encompass several others? That's what it appears to be saying here. So let's take a look here. Be nice to also, I wonder if I can configure it, because I actually like the auto wired annotation, so we'll see what happens there. All right. Let's do a dry run, because that was one of the options. So let's go do that. So let's open up Maven, rewrite, do a dry run, see what happens. Let's turn off that. So it's running the recipe, so clearly that's a good sign. Parsing the POM, which I would assume is going traversing all dependencies. Now it's running the recipes. All right, so what would it change? It would make a bunch of changes. So it would do no auto wired, which, all right. And it would be running the JUnit 5 assert to assertions, test annotation, runner to extension. So that's another one. So Spring changed it so you no longer need the space sort of runner or extends with. We'll see if it makes that change, because turning it to an extension from runner is not enough, but we'll see. And then the rest are actually just updating the test annotations, which is fine. It would also upgrade the parent version, presumably to 2 point something recent. And we could look at the patch, but honestly, let's just run it. So let's do a commit before we do that. So let me do a commit of so what I did is I actually migrated from Gradle, because can't stand Gradle. Migrated from Gradle to Maven, and added open rewrite plugin. All right. Yes, please commit, and don't ask me that anymore. All right, so we've done a commit, so let's go rewrite run. Let's actually bring up some of these files. Let's go to, for example, which one? Meal order API integration. So let's go that one. Meal order API integration test. That's this one. So presumably what it's going to do is it's going to replace the run with extends with, which in Spring, what, 2.3, 2.4? I don't remember. One of those. You no longer need that, because that's part of the some other annotations. But that's fine. We can always remove that manually. So let's bring up also. We've got the POM file open, so we can look at that. Ignore the redness here. That's IntelliJ not quite being up to date. All right, let's go do it. and then we can use the diff tool to see actually what it did. All right. So yes, as expected, it changed this to extend with, so that's good. Although that's no longer needed because Spring Boot test now has that in there. But that's fine. Redundant is not a problem. Let's look at our POM file. What did it upgrade Spring to? So it upgraded Spring to the latest 2.5, which was nice. It did not update the Java version, so I think I'll have to run a separate migration for that, or rewrite for that. But otherwise, everything else looked good. So we've got, if we look at the imports, so it changed it to JUnit 5 Jupyter, pulled in that extension. So let's do a rebuild, and then we're going to run the tests and see what happens. All right, build completed. Let's run all the tests. Aha, so something's not right. Let's see. So we've got a null pointer exception here. That's interesting. So here, calling from this test, certainly should not cause a problem, because we built a meal. This is a meal order kiosk thing, just so you know what this is doing. So we basically built an order that has a cheeseburger. We set an ID manually, then we called a repository to save. So I wonder what repository that is. So that's an auto-wired one, so that should be the real thing. In this case, it's a fake one. So when I say real thing, I mean a real fake one. So that all seems fine. So the question is, why did we get a null pointer exception? I'll have to inspect that, because all the other tests pass. So, like, this test passes, which tests the repository. So it's possible there's something that changed in some way with, because all of these are failing with null pointer exceptions. So it looks like, oh, so the null pointer exception is because I think it made a mistake. Yeah. I think rewrite made a mistake, because I've got two constructors. This one is for tests. This one is the one that's supposed to be used by Spring. But because it dropped the auto-wired, I think Spring is calling this one. So let's put that back and see what happens. This might be a bug. Yeah, so that's a bug in Open Rewrite. So look at that, I found a bug. One thing I'll have to find out is, when running a recipe, can I sort of suppress some of the sort of sub recipes? Like, I'd like to run the migration from Spring Boot 1 to Spring Boot 2, but I wanted to not drop the auto-wired. All right, well, that's comforting that it was something that was that easy and wasn't sort of a deeper issue. So let's do a commit and just look at all the differences. Look at all the differences. So these are probably all around the JUnit migration, just in this case, just changing the JUnit 4 to JUnit 5. So I've got a bunch of tests, so clearly it affected a bunch of tests. This one, same thing. Interesting. I have this commented out because I didn't want these tests to run. So now this comment is wrong, but that's no big deal. I would not have expected Open Rewrite to do that. Now it dropped. So this is another thing that I know Spring Boot does for you. If the name of the variable matches the path variable, then you don't need to pass in the string. I don't trust it because I'm refactoring all the time and doing renames all the time, and I don't trust that to stay stable. And I don't trust that if I change this name here, that it's always going to change this. So I don't like that change. Another test change, more tests changes, more test changes, more test. And so here's where it basically, it looks like it explicitly added JUnit 5, which is actually not necessary because Spring Boot now includes that. So, so it excluded JUnit 4, that's fine, but we don't have to explicitly include it anymore. So that's another thing I'll have to file an issue on. Now, Open Rewrite is fairly recent, so I am not surprised that there are these small things. But in general, this was nice. More test stuff. I mean, honestly, just the test stuff adjustment, and the fact that I didn't have to worry about. I mean, this is not a sophisticated project, but it's nice that it seemed to handle most everything except for that dropping the auto wired that it shouldn't have. All right, that's all for this video. I hope you found this interesting, and you can find me on Twitch, where I do live coding, so I do this kind of thing live. And you can also find me on Twitter as JitterTed. So I'm JitterTed both on Twitch, on Twitter, and on YouTube. And so thanks, and I'll see you around.